I never expected my marriage to end the way it did. Not with screaming. Not with a dramatic confrontation. Just an unsettling quiet. A silence that stretched between us like an invisible chasm, growing wider with each passing day. The strange part? I should have seen it coming. Looking back, all the signs were there. The way she started spending more time on her phone, how she'd linger by the mirror before leaving the house, the way she laughed a little too hard at messages I wasn't meant to see. But I ignored it. Or maybe I convinced myself that marriage was supposed to have its ups and downs, that this was just a phase. Then came the party. It was supposed to be a casual thing, just a gathering at some fancy rooftop bar downtown. I only heard about it in passing, an offhand comment Mallerie made as she rushed to get ready one evening. "I'm heading out for a bit," she said, adjusting an earring while checking herself in the mirror. I glanced up from the couch. "Out where?" "Just a party," she said casually, smoothing down her dress. "A friend from work invited me." Something about the way she said it made my stomach twist. "Which friend?" She hesitated just for a fraction of a second, but I caught it. "You don't know them," she finally said, brushing off my question as she grabbed her purse. That's when the warning bells started ringing. "Mallerie, I don't think this is a good idea," I said, standing up. "I mean, a party on a Tuesday night? That's not really your thing." She gave me a quick, dismissive smile. "It's just a few drinks, nothing crazy. Don't wait up." And with that, she was gone. I should have stopped her or at least asked more questions, but I didn't. Instead, I sat there, staring at the door long after it closed, feeling something deep in my gut telling me this wasn't just any party. It was the beginning of the end. I told myself I wouldn't sit around waiting, that I wouldn't be that kind of husband, the one pacing by the door, checking the time every few minutes, letting jealousy and suspicion eat away at him. But as the hours ticked by, I found myself doing exactly that. The TV was on, but I wasn't watching it. My phone was in my hand, but I wasn't scrolling. Instead, I kept glancing at the clock, feeling the weight of every passing second. Midnight, then 1, then 2. Still no word from Mallerie. I wanted to believe she just lost track of time, that she was caught up in conversations or that her phone had died. But the rational part of me, the part that had ignored too many red flags over the past few months, knew better. So, against my better judgment, I picked up my phone and called her. It rang and rang and rang. No answer. I sent a text. "Hey, it's late. You okay?" The message was delivered, but no read receipt, no response. That's when the unease in my chest turned into something else, something heavier. A feeling I couldn't quite name, but one that made my throat tighten and my hand shake just a little as I set the phone down. I knew where the party was being held. Mallerie had mentioned it offhandedly days ago while on the phone with one of her coworkers, not realizing I was listening. Some trendy rooftop bar downtown, the kind of place we never went to as a couple because, according to her, we had outgrown that scene. And yet, here she was, out past 2 o'clock in the morning at a place she'd once claimed she had no interest in. I tried to push away the thoughts. Maybe she really was just having fun, letting loose. Maybe I was overthinking things. But deep down I knew. I knew that no good husband ever had to convince himself that everything was fine at 2 o'clock in the morning. The moment I grabbed my keys, I felt like I had already lost something. Maybe not my marriage, not yet, but the illusion of security, the belief that whatever this was, it was still under my control. As I drove, the city streets were eerily quiet, save for the occasional group of people stumbling out of bars, laughing and unaware that someone like me was gripping his steering wheel so tightly his knuckles had turned white. When I reached the rooftop bar, I didn't go in right away. I sat in my car, looking up at the soft glow of light from above, watching as a few people walked out, arms draped around each other, their laughter muffled by the sound of music pouring from inside. And then I saw her, Mallerie. She wasn't alone. I don't know what I was expecting to see when I got there. Maybe some innocent explanation, something that would let me breathe again, something that would let me go home without feeling like my entire marriage was unraveling in front of me. But deep down, I knew I wouldn't get that. I parked a block away from the rooftop bar, sitting in my car for a moment, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. The neon lights of the city blurred through the windshield, and I could hear the faint bass of music thumping in the distance. My phone sat face up on the passenger seat, still without a single message from Mallerie. I took a deep breath and got out. The elevator ride up felt like it lasted forever. Each floor ticked by with a soft ding, my pulse rising with every passing second. When the doors finally slid open, I was hit with the thick scent of expensive cologne, liquor, and something else, something electric in the air, the kind of energy that came from people who had been drinking just enough to forget about consequences. I stepped onto the rooftop, scanning the crowd. String lights flickered overhead, casting a warm glow on people laughing, dancing, leaning into each other in ways that made my stomach twist. A DJ stood in the corner, nodding his head to the beat, while servers weaved between clusters of people, trays filled with half-melted cocktails. And then I saw her, Mallerie. She was standing near the bar, a drink in her hand, her body angled toward a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, well-dressed, with an easy confidence in the way he leaned toward her. Too close, closer than any friend should be. I should have turned around right then. I should have walked away before I saw something I couldn't unsee. But I didn't. I stayed. I watched. She laughed at something he said, tilting her head in that way she used to when we first met, when we were still new, still discovering each other. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. It was all in the way she looked at him, the way she touched his arm lightly, absent-mindedly, the way someone does when they're comfortable. I felt something crack inside me. I moved before I could stop myself, walking toward her with heavy steps, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear the music anymore. Mallerie. Her name left my lips like a warning, and when she turned to face me, I saw it. Guilt. Just for a second, just long enough for me to know everything I needed to. Her eyes widened. Amos. The man beside her barely reacted, taking a casual sip of his drink like he had every right to be there, like he had nothing to worry about. That pissed me off more than anything. Mallerie straightened her posture, forcing a smile. What are you doing here? What am I doing here? My voice was calmer than I felt. What are you doing here? She blinked like she was struggling to come up with the right answer, and then the lie came. It's just a work thing, she said too quickly, her fingers tightening around her glass. I told you about it. I let out a breathy laugh, shaking my head. No, you didn't. Silence. The man beside her set his drink down, finally showing some interest in the conversation. Hey man, maybe we should take a breath here. Don't. I cut him off, my eyes snapping to his. Don't talk to me. He held up his hands in mock surrender, but there was a smirk there, hidden just beneath the surface, and it made my blood boil. Mallerie reached for my arm, but I pulled away. I had seen enough. I'll see you at home, I said, turning on my heel and walking away before I could do something I'd regret. I didn't know what hurt more, the fact that she had lied or the fact that she wasn't even trying very hard to hide it anymore. I drove home in silence. No music, no radio, just the dull hum of the engine and the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. My hands were clenched so tightly around the steering wheel that my fingers ached, but I didn't loosen my grip. If I did, I wasn't sure what would happen. Maybe my hands would shake. Maybe I'd finally let myself process what I had just seen. I didn't want to. I wanted to pretend that I had misread the situation, that the way she had touched his arm, the way she had looked at him, it didn't mean anything. But deep down, I knew better. I had been with Mallerie for years, long enough to know every one of her nervous tics, every little lie that passed through her lips disguised as something harmless. And the look she had given me tonight, it wasn't just guilt, it was fear. I pulled into the driveway and sat there for a long time, staring at our darkened house. It felt different now, like something had shifted in the foundation, like it was no longer the place I had built a life with my wife but just a house, a structure of walls that had been holding up a lie for longer than I wanted to admit. When I finally got out of the car and stepped inside, the air was thick with silence. I turned on a light, but it did nothing to chase away the feeling settling in my chest. I didn't bother changing out of my clothes. Instead, I sank onto the couch, leaned forward, and rested my elbows on my knees, staring at the floor. I waited, I wasn't sure for what exactly. For her to come home, for an explanation, for something to make this entire night feel like a misunderstanding. It didn't come. An hour passed, then two. My phone remained silent. No calls, no texts. My wife was out there somewhere, but she wasn't thinking about me. She wasn't worried about what I had seen or how I felt. Sitting here in an empty house, knowing that everything between us had shifted in a way that couldn't be undone. And that's when I realized something. She didn't care. That thought hit me harder than anything else. Not the party, not the man she had been with, not even the way she had lied straight to my face. The thing that hurt the most was that none of it had seemed to matter to her. When the sound of the front door finally broke the silence, it was almost 3 o'clock in the morning. I didn't move. I didn't look up. I just listened as she set her keys down, slipped off her heels, and pattered across the floor like nothing had happened. Then she saw me. Amos. Her voice was soft, hesitant. I exhaled slowly, keeping my eyes on the floor. You're home late. There was a beat of silence, then a forced chuckle. I told you it was just a party. I lifted my head then, meeting her gaze. Was it? Something flickered in her expression. A flash of something unreadable, gone as quickly as it came. You're making this into something it's not. I studied her. Her makeup was still perfect, her hair still neatly styled, but there was something different in her eyes, something distant, detached. You lied to me, I said, my voice calm. Mallerie sighed, dropping onto the chair across from me. Amos, I didn't lie. I almost laughed at that. You told me it was a work thing. It was. I shook my head. No, it wasn't. Her jaw tightened slightly. Okay, fine. It wasn't technically a work thing, but it wasn't some big deal either. I just needed a night out. With him. That made her flinch. I let the silence hang between us, watching as she shifted in her seat, looking anywhere but at me. She was caught. She knew it. Finally, she exhaled and crossed her arms. I don't know what you want me to say, Amos. I leaned back, my stomach twisting. I want you to tell me the truth. Mallerie bit her lip, and for a second I thought maybe, just maybe, she would. But then she stood up, brushing off her dress. I'm too tired for this. I'm going to bed. And just like that, the conversation was over. I watched her disappear down the hallway, leaving me sitting there in the dim light, alone with thoughts that wouldn't stop racing. This wasn't just one bad night. This wasn't a mistake that could be fixed with an apology or an explanation. This was the moment I realized my marriage was already over. She just hadn't told me yet. The next morning felt like stepping into an alternate reality, one where nothing had changed except for me. Mallerie moved through the house as if last night never happened, as if she hadn't walked through the door at 3 o'clock in the morning with a lie still fresh on her lips. She hummed softly as she brewed coffee, scrolling through her phone with the kind of casual ease that made my stomach churn. I watched her from the kitchen doorway, feeling like a stranger in my own home. My mind kept replaying the moment she walked in last night, how she had shut down our conversation before it even began, how she had chosen silence over honesty. She finally looked up and saw me standing there. Morning, she said, as if it were just another day. I didn't answer right away. I studied her instead, trying to find some trace of the woman I had married in the way she held herself, the way she avoided my gaze for just a fraction of a second too long. She was different now. Or maybe she had always been like this, and I was only just noticing. Are we going to talk about last night? I asked. She sighed dramatically, setting her phone down. Amos, what is there to talk about? I clenched my jaw. You disappeared until 3 o'clock in the morning, lied about where you were, lied about who you were with, and when I confronted you, you acted like I was the problem. Her lips pressed into a thin line. I didn't lie. Mallerie. I cut her off, my voice low. Don't. For a second, something flickered in her eyes. Annoyance, frustration, maybe even a bit of guilt. But she masked it quickly, shaking her head with a bitter laugh. You're overreacting. I let out a breath, shaking my head. No, I'm finally reacting the way I should have months ago. She scoffed and turned back to her coffee, Like that was just some inconvenience she had to deal with before starting her day. I felt something inside me harden at that. She didn't care. I had spent the entire night agonizing over what this meant for us, what I was supposed to do next, while she had simply slept it off. There was no guilt in her voice, no concern in her eyes. She had made her choice. I just hadn't accepted it yet. I grabbed my keys off the counter and turned to leave. "Where are you going?" she asked, barely looking up. I paused in the doorway. "I don't know." And then I walked out, leaving her standing there with her coffee and her secrets. I drove aimlessly for a while, the morning sun casting long shadows across the quiet streets. My mind was a tangled mess of thoughts, looping through every conversation we had over the past year, searching for the moment I had lost her. Had it been gradual, or had she just woken up one day and decided I wasn't enough anymore? At some point, I found myself parked outside an old diner, the kind with faded red booths and the scent of coffee thick in the air. I ordered something I wasn't hungry for and sat there staring at my untouched plate while conversations buzzed around me. People laughing, talking, living their lives. How many of them were sitting across from someone who had already checked out of their marriage? I didn't know how long I sat there before my phone buzzed. A text from Mallerie. Just 2 words. "Come home." Not "I'm sorry." Not "let's talk." Just a command, a summons. I stared at the screen, my grip tightening around the phone. For the first time, I realized something. I didn't want to go home. Not to the silence. Not to the lies. Not to a woman who had already made up her mind about where she stood in our marriage. I set my phone down, watching as the notification faded from the screen. For the first time since this all started, I wondered what would happen if I just didn't go back. I didn't go back right away. I sat in that diner for what felt like hours, nursing a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold, watching people come and go. The world kept moving, oblivious to the fact that my marriage was crumbling beneath me. The truth was, I didn't want to go home. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But eventually I did. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the sun had already started its slow descent, casting long shadows across the front yard. I turned off the engine and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, preparing myself for whatever version of Mallerie was waiting inside. Would she be angry? Apologetic? Dismissive? I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. Inside, the house was eerily quiet. No sound of the TV, no faint hum of music from the kitchen. Just silence. The air felt different, heavier, like the walls had absorbed all the tension from the night before and were now pressing it back down on me. Then I saw her. She was sitting on the couch, legs tucked beneath her, phone in hand. She looked up when I walked in, her expression unreadable. "You didn't answer my text," she said. I shut the door behind me and leaned against it. "I saw it." She set her phone down and exhaled, rubbing her temple. "So, where were you?" I let out a humorless laugh. "That's funny. I was going to ask you the same thing last night." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. That was new. Usually, she'd launch into some excuse, some half-truth designed to make me feel like the unreasonable one. But this time, she just stared at me as if waiting for something. I walked past her and into the kitchen, grabbing a glass from the cupboard. I wasn't even thirsty. I just needed something to do with my hands. I could feel her watching me, the weight of her gaze pressing against my back. "Are we really doing this?" she asked finally. I turned to face her, glass in hand. "Doing what?" "This," she said, gesturing between us, acting like something's wrong when nothing actually happened. I felt something snap inside me. "Nothing happened?" I repeated, my voice deceptively calm. She sighed and stood up. "Amos, No." I cut her off. Don't insult me by pretending like I didn't see what I saw. Don't stand there and tell me that nothing happened when we both know that's a lie." She crossed her arms, her posture defensive. "I didn't cheat on you." I laughed then, a bitter sound that filled the empty space between us. "Maybe not physically, not yet, but emotionally, you checked out a long time ago, Mallerie." Her lips parted slightly, and for a moment, I thought she might deny it. But she didn't. Instead, she looked away, her fingers gripping the hem of her sweater. That silence, that hesitation, told me everything I needed to know. I ran a hand down my face, feeling the exhaustion settle into my bones. "How long?" I asked. She blinked. "How long what?" I gestured vaguely. "How long have you been like this? Half here, half somewhere else? Because I know this isn't new. I know last night wasn't some random slip-up." She swallowed but didn't answer. That was answer enough. I exhaled slowly, my chest tightening. "Why didn't you just tell me?" That seemed to catch her off guard. Her brow furrowed slightly. "Tell you what?" "That you don't love me anymore." The words hung between us, heavy and sharp. She opened her mouth, then closed it. And there it was, the truth she had been too afraid to say out loud. I set the glass down and nodded slowly, as if finally making sense of a puzzle that had been missing too many pieces. "Right, Amos?" she started, but I shook my head. "I don't need an apology, Mallerie. I don't even need an explanation." I met her gaze, feeling strangely calm despite the storm raging inside me. "I just need to know if there's anything left to fight for." Her silence was all the answer I needed. I stood there staring at Mallerie, waiting for her to say something, anything that might convince me I was wrong, that there was still something left between us, something worth salvaging. But she just looked at me, lips parted like she wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. The silence stretched, suffocating. I had always been the one to fix things in our marriage. When we had disagreements, I was the one who smoothed things over. When she pulled away emotionally, I was the one who chased after her. And for a long time, I thought that was just how relationships worked. Someone always cared a little more. Someone always held on a little tighter. But standing in our kitchen, I realized something that nearly knocked the breath out of me. I was the only one still holding on. And Mallerie? She had already let go. She exhaled sharply and turned away, pressing her hands against the kitchen counter. "I don't know what you want me to say, Amos." I let out a dry chuckle. "You know what's funny? I don't either." She shook her head, running a hand through her hair. "You're making this a bigger deal than it is. Nothing happened last night." I clenched my jaw. "Then why does it feel like everything did?" She went quiet and that was it. That was all I needed to hear. I rubbed the back of my neck, feeling a strange kind of numbness settle over me. I had spent the past few days, hell, the past few months, convincing myself that if I just tried harder, if I just said the right things, I could fix this. But you can't fix something that's already broken beyond repair. I swallowed, then spoke, my voice quieter this time. "Mallerie, do you even want to be married anymore?" She turned around slowly, her arms crossed over her chest. "Of course I do." It was too quick, too rehearsed. I nodded, letting the lie settle between us. "Right?" She sighed. "Amos, don't do this." I tilted my head. "Do what?" "Act like I'm some villain." I let out a breath of laughter that had no humor in it. "You're not a villain, Mallerie. But you're not my wife anymore either." "Not really." She flinched at that. I pushed away from the counter, suddenly feeling exhausted. "I need some air." I didn't wait for a response. I grabbed my jacket and walked out, stepping into the cool night air. The sky was dark, stars barely visible against the glow of the city. I took a deep breath, trying to clear my head, but the thoughts wouldn't stop. How did we get here? How did we go from late-night talks and inside jokes to this? A hollow marriage filled with avoidance and half-truths. I leaned against the porch railing, staring at the empty street, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't know what to do next. Because this wasn't just about last night. This was about everything. And I wasn't sure if there was any way to come back from it. I stood outside for a long time, letting the cold air bite at my skin, my breath coming out in slow, visible exhales. The quiet was almost peaceful, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside my head. For so long, I had been holding on, clinging to the idea that if I just fought hard enough, I could fix what was broken. That if I gave it enough time, enough effort, enough of myself, Mallerie would look at me the way she used to. But the truth was, I had been fighting alone, and I was tired. I don't know how long I stood there, but eventually, I heard the door open behind me. Light spilled onto the porch, and I felt Mallory's presence before she spoke. "Amos?" she said softly, hesitating. I didn't turn around right away. Instead, I let her words settle in the space between us. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel desperate to fix things. I didn't feel the need to beg for an explanation or an apology or some grand declaration that things would change. I just felt done. Finally, I turned to face her. She looked unsure, like she wasn't sure what to say or how to fix this. But I wasn't looking for a fix anymore. I was looking for freedom. "I think we both know this isn't working," I said, my voice steady. Her expression faltered. "Amos, I shook my head, cutting her off gently. "It's okay." And for the first time, I actually meant it. Her shoulders slumped slightly, and for a moment, she looked like she wanted to argue. But instead, she just nodded, as if finally accepting what had been true for a long time. I took a deep breath, feeling something inside me loosen, unravel, release. I had been afraid of this moment, of what it would mean to finally let go. But standing here, looking at Mallerie, I realized something. I wasn't afraid anymore, because I knew that this wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning of something new. I stepped back toward the door, but this time I wasn't leaving out of frustration or anger. I was leaving because it was time. As I walked inside, I felt lighter than I had in months, maybe even years, because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready.